Welcome to this special Gold Derby Meet the Experts TV editor panel. I'm News and Features editor Ray Richmond, and I'm joined by editors Joanna Naugle of The Bear, Philip Fowler of Mrs. Davis, Bob Ducsay of Poker Face, James Renfroe of Shrinking, Dean Zimmerman of Stranger Things, and AJ Catoline of Ted Lasso. Hello, esteemed editors. It's exciting to have such a talented and accomplished group here today. And since you've all reached such a successful point in your professional lives, I'd like to ask, what made you decide this was going to be your career path? I don't think any kid grows up thinking, I really, really want to edit other people's stuff. But that's your passion. And in truth, I see you all not just as cutters, but storytellers. What pulled you into this world and made you decide editing was for you? Let's start with Joanna.
Yeah, I mean, some of my earliest memories as a kid are messing around with my parents' like VHS camera and doing little camera tricks of like, oh, if you press, record and then stop and then record again and someone will disappear. So like that's like the earliest memory I have of like the power of magical editing. But then I was lucky enough to go to NYU for film school, and I took a class where we actually shot on 16mm film. And we're actually cutting and taping it together on Steenbecks. And that's when I really just appreciated editing as, as we've all said, like the final draft of the story where you're actually putting it together for that last rewrite. And it was just like such a literal way of seeing, if you take this and put it next to this, like what emotion can you elicit? And I was so fortunate of like only ever using like iMovie, as I was starting out, being able to undo really quickly. So I think it put a lot more emphasis on what every cut means, making sure it's actually the right point. And yeah, just seeing how all those pieces can add up to telling an amazing story.
Philip?
NYU in the house. I just want to say that's so cool.
There you go.
Go Violets, I think.
Yeah, Violets.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil, what about you?
I mean, I grew up in Wyoming, not the movie capital of the world, and but I thought everything that came to the movies and was obsessed with a lot of them. I was looking at your resume, Bob, and I saw that you had cut the Mummy movies back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And something that my parents still don't let me live down is I came back from The Mummy Returns and I was quote unquote, I said, this is the best movie I've ever seen. And now anytime I say I saw a good movie, everyone always says, well, is it as good as The Mummy Returns? It's been a few days, few years since I've seen it, but I'm gonna still stick by that stance.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Steve Summers would be very happy to hear that.
What about you, Bob?
I really wanted to go to Tisch and I didn't get in. So I don't know what to say about that, but I went to USC and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know, do I want to be a director, maybe a cinematographer? These were things that I was interested in, and I just discovered editing there. I think it appealed to me, two sides of my brain. I'm kind of interested in technological things, but more importantly, I discovered what power of editing and what it could do, what it allowed you to do to create character and to tell a story. And I've done this long enough that I started out on film, and I found it, incredibly difficult dealing with the mechanical process of film, but somehow persevered long enough to hang in there for electronic editing, which I think just really opened up all the possibilities for me. I mean, the machines shouldn't necessarily be the thing, but I really locked in once we were able to start working electronically. So that's my path.
What about you, James? What made you decide I need to be an editor, and that's the only choice for career for me?
I didn't know that it was a career, honestly. I watched a ton of movies and TV and didn't really think it was real. I grew up in Georgia before it was a TV film place. So I think in college, they filmed a road trip on my campus and was like, oh, this is cool, I guess. But I started working as a projectionist in college and really fell in love with cutting the film and came out here to try to cut film, and then nobody cuts film. So I think I've worked on one project since then, shot on film, and we were digital anyway. But similar to Bob, it feeds like multiple parts of my interests. Like I like the storytelling part. I like that it's on computers, even though I'm terrible at the other parts of computers. That part of it came pretty easily. I was taking a class in New York and did editing. I edited a video of dogs pooping and fighting because that's where my tastes are. And just rock Zarathustra, and spent like the entire day there, and it didn't feel like I had been working. It didn't feel like it was time. It felt like I sort of fell into it and got lost in it. And I figured if you're going to do a job, I had just been interning with my uncle at like a law firm. And I was like, if you're going to do a job all day, it might as well be something that's fun. And then, yeah, got lucky, and then got lucky again, and then got lucky again, and then got lucky again. And I'm sure talent might be some of it, but I feel like luck is always part of the equation.
For everyone. And Dean, what got you roped into this?
Well, I mean, for me, it was, my dad's been cutting for 50 years. So, and being, probably one of the greatest editors I've ever known, and think is probably one of the best in the world. I was very lucky and fortunate to be just kind of, that was my life, going to see my dad at the studio, being in the cutting room. But what made me want to actually become and try to follow in his footsteps, if you will, was I went to the premiere of Rocky III when I was 13 years old and was bawling my eyes out at the end. And on the way home, my dad was like, "Hey, sorry I made you cry, son." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And it started this kind of obsessive every night questionnaire of, what do you do? How did you do that? Which then just led me to, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to affect people in certain ways and get them out of their mundane head for even just 2 hours for a movie or an hour for a TV show or whatever it may be. But just to have an impact in people's lives that they didn't think they could in something that you do. And it's also a very tangible thing. So for me, it's I'm very tactile. So working on the computers, working on film, which I was able to do a lot of. So I got to cut a lot of film.
Brag about it.
And do that transition. Yes. So you shouldn't be too jealous, because it was definitely much harder back then. But now it's just copy and delete. It's easy.
And
It was amazing, Dean, being at the Ace Eddies this year and seeing your dad get honored. It was a beautiful ceremony, and seeing the montage of his reel of work was just so inspiring. And
yeah, the crazy thing about that montage, there was probably 10 or 15 movies that didn't even make it in there because there just wasn't enough time.
sure.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, I guess
AJ,
I'll quickly answer and say I also went to NYU like Joanna, and I went, when I came out to LA, I did a program at USC like Bob as well. And I always like to write. I was in theater as a kid, and I was always impressed with writing. And I think I learned quickly that editing is very much writing with picture and sound instead of words on a page. So yeah, back at, when I was in school, I'll date myself, we were cutting on 3/4 inch tape to tape. And it was just so frustrating, but I was very impressed how when you put a piece of music to different shots, they did that at NYU, they gave us a camera and they said, go around the city, get some shots and come back and put them together into montages, and just which song you use would change the cut entirely. And I realized the power of it, but it was just so frustrating to do it on tape to tape. And if somebody said, oh, you got to make a change here, you just didn't want to do it. Like, it was just like, I don't have the energy to go back and to line up all those tapes. And again, but then when I went to USC, I saw my first Avid and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a game changer. And I think it was just mentorship with me. I had a lot of great mentors that I met in the post-production world, and they encouraged me to stick with it and to tell stories. And I got involved with a documentary that really, I guess at the time, was independent. And they said, we'll give you a shot to do this. And so I started cutting, and it just kind of grew from there and trying different things. But yeah, I think that's the story for me, is mentorship. Yeah.
my other question briefly for everyone is, what's a piece of advice you give to young and aspiring editors? Even if it's no, don't stop, do anything else. I mean, I'm hoping it's not that. But let's go in reverse order. Back to you, AJ.
Oh boy. I think I tell them to cut whatever you can get your hands on, because, you know, people won't, you know, the challenging thing about this business is they don't want to give you a shot unless you've done exactly what they need to do. So it's a bit of a chicken egg scenario. So I'm constantly telling them to try things and put reels together. And also, I think once they do get started, try to diversify in different genres. You know, I guess I've cut 2 sports comedies now, if you want to call it Ted Lasso a sports comedy. But, you know, even now I'm trying to be like, you know, the fact that our show is so dramatic, I want to maybe now work more in drama. So I tell younger editors to just try different things, take chances, and network with other great editors, you know, like the ones in this panel. And that will probably get you ahead and get people to know who you are. And there's a community of us, and we all support each other.
Dean, how do you corrupt the young minds of tomorrow?
Listen, I will definitely echo everything that AJ said for sure. I really encourage them to just be relentlessly ambitious and always be willing to try. And the biggest thing for me is always be open for suggestion. There's never a bad idea. There's always just not trying to implement it. And if you don't try, you'll never know if you can succeed. So again, with the technology we have today, Command D and try a different version. It's pretty much that simple. But you know, again, just that, you know, just show the willingness and wantingness and drive to do it, and put in the hours and the effort, and you'll be very successful.
James, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, same. I say cut anything you can get your hands on, even if that's like a scene I've already cut. It's helpful for me to see another version of it. You know, I might see, oh, well, that, you know, even if I'm learning an edit, not necessarily liking how it was put together, one good edit is all you need to change like a different scene. So I'd say that, and then sort of piggybacking on a little bit what AJ was saying. I find that like the last job you did is likely to be the next job you do. So if you are like doing only comedies, trying to find a way to find a comedy with heart might find a way to get you into dramas. And then having just a good attitude. You know, I think if part of the process is collaboration, part of the process is making good relationships. And if you are combative, if you take every note personally, which I used to, but in like a I'm gonna cry kind of way, not a I'm gonna fight back kind of way. You know, what do you mean best take? I thought so. You know, like be willing to allow what you did to change, because the truth is every single one of our, I won't speak for everyone, but likely every single one of our cuts is too long. You know, like there's air, there's fat, there's lines of dialogue we're desperate to cut, but can't. And so like, just sort of be open and flexible.
And from what I understand, there's no crying in editing.
There might be.
Not true. Not true.
I stand corrected. Bob?
I was just thinking, I have absolutely cried. There's no
Yeah.
but much like yourself, I mean, it's funny hearing that. This isn't really the question, but early on in my career, I found it very difficult when I felt passionately about something to let it go, and it's problematic, and you really shouldn't do that. And I've learned that I can have a strong point of view, and you have to, because it's the job. But you're collaborating, so you just got to let some things go. But I think the thing I would say to people more than anything else is I don't think there's an absolute obstacle to success. I think the main thing, and I'm applying really how it's worked for me, but I've seen it in lots of other people, is just to work really, really hard. And if you want it, it'll happen. I actually truly believe that, because it's not that talent doesn't matter. It does. It's just that if you work really hard, especially over time, you get better regardless of what your talent level is. And if you're helpful to people, they will want to have you around.
Couldn't
Philip,
agree more.
what's your piece of advice?
Yeah, I echo so much of what all of you said, and I agree with you, Bob. I always tell aspiring editors that be someone who others would want to hang out with for long stretches of period of time. But one other thing that I think is really important outside of the actual craft of editing is have a balanced life and not let our work and editing be a 24/7 job. Something that I have had to learn in my career early on. I would work nonstop, weekends, free work, whatever it took to impress. And I thought that working long hours equaled better work. And I've learned over the years that you can work a good 8-hour day, just 5 days a week, and still do good work, and also have time to spend with your family and your friends and loved ones. And I think it makes the work better.
I think that's actually excellent advice, Phil. You know, we always think if we impress the hell out of everyone and just work ourselves to the bone, that it will pay dividends. And that just isn't always the case at all. It's quality rather than quantity too often, I think. Joanna?
Yeah, this is a tough question to go last on because everyone's already said so many great things I agree with. I was like, oh, gonna say that. But I guess my advice would be if you get the opportunity to get in the room and be a post PA or an assistant editor, I feel like the best AEs I've worked with are always like being proactive, thinking like 5 steps ahead. And if you're just sitting in, you know, your edit room waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're not contributing to the team. And like, you know, maybe sometimes the work you do won't end up being used, but if you're like, you know what, I was thinking you might need sound effects for this scene, I went ahead and pulled some. Or, you know, I was thinking like we could already prep this for VFX because we're going to do this. Like just really trying to think of ways to be involved will then just end with you getting more and more responsibility. And then, you know, when you get the chance to cut something, just, you know, you'll be ready to dive right in.
Excellent. Well, you have all just been terrific. Thank you so much. Congratulations to all of you. Such an impressive panel of television editors. Check out their shows if you haven't already. Once again, our panel has been Joanna Naugle for The Bear on Hulu, Phil Fowler for Mrs. Davis on Peacock, Bob Ducsay for Poker Face, also on Peacock, James Renfroe for Shrinking on Apple TV+, Dean Zimmerman for Stranger Things on Netflix, and AJ Catoline for Ted Lasso on Apple TV+. Their shows are currently streaming. Best of luck to all of you at the Emmys. And thanks for joining us at Gold Derby today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Much. Congratulations, everyone. Great work.